David Morgan with you for a weekly perspective. I'm going to start off with on January 20th, after the inaugural speech, etc., moving into the financial look. This came through a Black Agenda commentary by editor Glenn Ford. An ever smaller circle of billionaires controls the planet's wealth. Lots interesting. I don't read the whole thing to you, but the world strangled, smothered, and starved by the death of billionaires. Approximately 1,800 of them by Ford magazine's count. Basically, these people own more than about half of the world's population. It's really rather startling when you actually think about what this really means. So I'll leave it at that. You can Google this title and you'll be able to read the whole article. From Wolf Street, we get the dollar most crowded trade. I usually talk about the metals and currencies, and lately I've done these weekly perspectives and just kind of throwing it out there, and mostly financial sector, but nonetheless, the dollar has fallen again since its peak. It's down about 3% since the peak in 2016, and this, of course, is beneficial, as this article points out, to income outside the U.S. In other words, if you're Apple and the dollar's falling, you're loving this because it translates into foreign currency reserves into weaker dollars, and therefore they get to show more dollars. So it's actually something that most of the people that kind of look at this type of commentary, for myself and many, many, many others, know that by having a weak currency, it purportedly helps your export advantage, and that's basically what he's saying here. Just staying on the meme a bit on the billionaire thing. I mean, when we sit there and look at Jamie Dimon, the famous J.P. Morgan, his 2016 pay was $28 million, and you factor in what that bank represents and how much it's been fined for illicit activities, and basically for the amount of money that flows through there and they profit. These fines are basically a slap on the wrist. So this is just another marker for us to see the distortions that have taken place throughout the economic system based on a system that really does not live by the principles. And of course, the foundational situation is, as we all know, that we're living in a 1984 type of scenario, a Brave New World scenario, a scenario where there's no real reality. The Matrix comes to mind as well, where we're in a system that you can get something for nothing, and the closer you are to the Federal Reserve or the printers of the money, quote-unquote money, that is loaned at interest to the people through their respective governments, and the people are the ones that are required to pay it back. Just how distorted it is. So you can get something for nothing if you're a banker, but no one else can. You try counterfeiting and see what happens if you're caught. So moving on to further topics. Here's an opinion piece by Elliot Blair Smith from Market Watch talking about the Puerto Rican debacle. Really, really quite sad. Talks about in this article how Goldman Sachs showed up with an ingenious idea for Puerto Rico. Now it's insolvent, of course. Essentially the local central bank to borrow its way out of a small amount of trouble and pay off the $6.8 billion in older unfunded debt. In other words, borrow yourself rich, borrow yourself out of debt. It is, of course, impossible. The problem is debt, and we only create more. Is this a slight hint of what will happen in the U.S.? Possibly. In fact, inevitably at some point. Of course, as I've said, I want to be consistent here for those that don't get to listen to all my interviews, and I'm not, saying you should or shouldn't. What I'm stating is that I do believe that there will be a great good feeling for a while under the Trump administration. I really think that the attitude and outlook of the nation as a whole will be benefited by him being in the White House. This is opinion only. I'm not a big Trump supporter. It's probably sounding that way. But what I wish to convey is that the overall take will be more positive, and that alone could create a swell of good feeling and higher velocity of money In other words, people feel good, so they're more willing to spend. There certainly will be more money thrown from the government to the people directly through fiscal policy, as I've talked about many times recently. But that doesn't mean that these long-term systemic problems that Puerto Rico is like a very small part of the pie. And remember, these are all U.S. citizens. There's 3.5 million in Puerto Rico, which is like 1% of the total 350 million U.S. citizens within the continental U.S., Canada, continental U.S., Alaska, and Hawaii. So, something to ponder. Moving on to more global look, use of cards are slowing as cash makes a comeback. This, of course, is talking about India. Cash appears to be back in currency with its increasing availability. It's prompted people to use it to make small buys. However, it hasn't stopped the banks from being aggressive. And, of course, we all know that banks are about not only quote-unquote money, they are all about control. And I don't think I want to belabor that any further. Touching briefly on the geopolitical side, key NATO commander agrees with Trump. NATO is obsolete. This is from antiwar.com, as you can see, a few days ago. With most political leadership in NATO member nations last, U.S. President Donald Trump for calling the alliance obsolete, he doesn't appear to be alone, with top NATO commander General Dennis Mercer saying he agrees that there are parts of NATO which are absolutely obsolete. Well, I don't think Donald Trump is going to turn down the war machine, but who knows? I'll stay open-minded on that. We'll have to wait. And finally, I'll wrap it up here. This one's going a little longer. I try to make these 5 minutes, and I strive to make them at least 10 minutes or less so that more people watch them. But touching on the most important commodity of all, and it's not precious metals, it is energy. And for the most part, that still means oil. From Rig Zone, January 18th, coming through Reuters, oil and gas discoveries around the world dropped last year to their lowest level since the 1940s. So I don't know where anyone stands on peak oil. I've certainly studied it for years, and I do not claim to be an oil expert at all. What I am saying is that oil makes the world go round. It's energy that causes everything. The cheaper energy is on a per capita basis. In other words, how much energy each person on the planet gets to use basically determines what their lifestyle is. And we've had cheap energy for a very long time, for the last 100 plus years. It looks as if that is coming to an end, even though I know that gas and oil prices are low right now. This article, among many others that you can study and research on your own, point to the inevitability that at some point this situation will change. And it is changing. It's just that prices aren't reflecting that. And after listening to one of the most interesting updates on this from Steve Rocco, he did an interview with the Hill Group. I'm not sure what the prices are going to do. But as far as the availability of oil, it looks like it's waning. Now, there are technologies claimed to be out there. And, of course, these are things that we look at in the Morgan Report, always trying to look ahead and see over the horizon what may be up and coming and what could make a better situation for everybody involved, meaning, the global citizenry, nation states by themselves, regardless what could be beneficial to the humanity. So I'm going to leave it there. I'm off to the Vancouver Resource Investment Conference for about the 17th year in a row. Looking forward to it. If any of you that are listening to this update happen to be at that show, certainly drop by booth 924, where we will be during the both days, Sunday and Monday.